Uh, okay. So, guys, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whenever you watch this. It's been almost exactly a year since we had this lockdown battle started out, battle against Corona. If you remember from last year, we were actually doing that tali at around 5 o'clock last time with Rahul. So I thought it'll be a decent time to actually recap what has happened in the last 1 year, how MBA market specifically has been affected by COVID. Look at both MBA pre and post markets as such. So, Rahul, 1 year sitting at home or trying to be at home as much as possible. What do you feel? You're liking it? A lot of people are saying, like, I love working from home and stuff. So, what is your case?
I personally don't like working from home too much. And yeah, maybe if I had a big Kingfisher type mention, then maybe that would be different. So I don't know if you can just, kind of take over Vijay Mallya, then we'll join you there in Goa. I think, yeah. But typically speaking, it's a natural human tendency to seek out company, and people sometimes miss out on the social aspect of work as well as the social aspect of education. We kind of say that, look, what you get in a class, you get in a video. But I think sometimes you also want to sort of just have that softer part of it, going to a class, talking to people, coming back, that kind of stuff, part of the travel, and I don't know. So one of these things that I do these days is I look for good cafes and take my laptop there and sit and work from there. So it's like work from home shifted to a work from cafe kind of stuff. Try out a different cafe sometimes. But our offices are now open, so I do work from there. So in that sense, yes. But it's good to have as an option. It's good to have an option that you don't have to every day go to this thing. But doing the same thing again and again, no, that's concerning.
Okay. So let's look at it in part. I mean, like, what demonetization did to online payment, what is lockdown was supposed to do for online education. Would you say it's a equal apple to apple sort of a comparison?
No, not really. Again, remember, if you look at what it does, a situation like this, it induces trial, right? Which is a good part. I mean, for any marketing person, right? You have a product. I think one of the first thing you want to do, especially if it's not a very high cost product, is induce trial. मेरा chocolate, मेरा chips try कर लो, पसंद आया तो फिर से खरीदेगा. That kind of stuff. And if it's a low cost item, it is like cheap. You just try it out. उसमें क्या जाता है? So what pandemic has done, it has forced people to try it. Now it is the litmus test. Now when offline options are available, those who have tried it, will they like it? Will they continue? Will they choose to continue? Or will they say ki, or will they recommend it as a good option? And so on and so forth. Right? And I think it is problematic. I think it's problematic. I would believe there are a few parts of education which online is still not able to crack. I'm not saying it will never crack. That's obviously too much of an exaggeration. But they have to work on that. People in that industry have to work on certain aspects. See, access is the biggest selling point of online education. It's easy to access across geographies. Pricing can be lowered and access across times. So that's a big plus point that need not be sold again. But there are a few other aspects which offline offers, which as of now online has to find a way. Achha, should I go into those? Okay.
Yes, so yes, please.
One, I think, is student discipline, right? So sometimes it's not about, we have excellent teachers and stuff like that. You have excellent teacher and an idiot, and the result is still an idiot. So, but more than the idiot part, which is a little deterministic, is to talk about unmotivated person. Right? It's like the greatest teacher can't teach somebody who refuses to get motivated. So, but even for a teacher to motivate, online as of now is not doing it too well. Somebody who's already motivated, no problem. It works quite nicely. The second aspect I thought is the social part of learning, right? So like my kids, they say, okay, it's okay, videos are okay, school is okay, but I want to go there to the campus, and I want to meet my friends, and I want to have that recess and go to a canteen and that kind of stuff, and chit chat a little bit between the 5 minutes before class and so on. That part is missing.
Okay, so the first thing which you said is about the motivation part.
Yes.
Now, in some cases, the discipline is already made. Like, for example, if it's a university, for example, you get a degree at the end of the university. So you have that stick, if not a carrot, at least you have a stick that I don't complete this course, I don't attend these many lectures, I don't submit these many assignments. Basically, I can go and I will not get the degree, and degree is a bare essential to even enter the job market today. So what do you do in a case like, say, for example, an MBA market where he has an option like, my degree, okay, I can probably not do this and my life will still go on. I'm just trying to improve my life by getting into this course and do it. So where does the motivation come in there? And that is one of the things which I thought about the physical classes, is that once the student pays up and he actually starts attending the classes, basically he has that, because he has paid up and he has that structure of 1 hour of travel to and fro, or maybe 15 minutes of travel to and fro, he gets out of his house, he is at least motivated to study. He starts for 15-20 minutes, he probably likes that subject and he probably goes. Now with an online thing, after the first demo class or first trial video, I probably after the third or fourth class, I may not want to open the next set of books, because there are better things online to available, and I know it's not going to immediately change my life. How do you motivate your student in that case?
Let's understand the scenario a little bit. I think we've seen that. I think you were in time. I've spent a lot of time on that side. Even in something like mock cats, right? When it was a physical mock cat to be conducted at a specified location, specified time, attendance was way higher.
Yes.
At something like 55-60% attendance, depending on the city plus minus.
Yeah.
55-60% of the enrolled strength would attend the mock cat, without any flexibility on where to give it. Okay, in a big city, you would have 3-4 centers, and the timing was specified, and they would do it. And when you say you do it from home at a time of your convenience, it's 25-30%. I'm not saying it's the only factor. It's also doing free online mocks and all that. But okay, you paid for this mock. It's available. It's comfortable. You have time flexibility. Still doesn't work. So sometimes it makes sense for you to say, look, do this at this time. And I don't give you flexibility. It's probably better not to give flexibility, because too much flexibility, too much choice is also a problem. Right?
That's true.
Except the really disciplined people. For them, I don't think any mode of education matters. They can do videos, asynchronous, they can do live classes, they can study on.
Those are the guys who will sit under a lampshade and probably study. The Sharma ji ka beta.
These are the guys. So for them, it's not so much of an issue. So that is a concern, right? So I'm sure I have spoken to quite a few students in IIM right now, who've now spent a year doing online classes. And the experience has been, I think, from mediocre to pathetic. That's the kind of feedback.
I think they cannot say that. They cannot say that out, because unfortunately their salaries and future jobs and their alumni relations are also there. But according to most people, this is the costliest internet streaming service that they're paid for. And it's pretty crap.
Right. Nobody wants to go on the record. And remember, these are supposed to be like great faculty teaching pretty interesting subjects. And if that is the case, then you begin to worry about online education. I'm not saying different things are not being tried. For example, breakout rooms are tried. People are trying to change the size, let's say, the size of the videos or the time of the classes. A lot of experimentation needs to get done. Because somewhere we said we were doing offline classes, now we'll do online. We'll just take this stuff and put it there. I think that, for example, our standard MBA training classes was 2 hours, right? Typically 1.5, some cases 1 hour 45, sometimes time used to do 2 hours. Where did this 2 hours number come from? There was a logic behind it. The logic is, if somebody is going to spend an average of 30-40 minutes commuting and going back, and that's not just student, also faculty, then you better, you have at least a 2-hour class. And weekends used to do 4-hour classes. But when you're not commuting, then why does it have to be a 2-hour class? But most people are saying, okay, let's just take the same model online. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours. Why not Monday to Saturday, 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour? I'm not saying it is going to be better, but I'm saying why not? At least I'll be thinking in those lines. Okay, why does it have to be this way? Why does it have to be this way? Right. Similarly, our tests are separate from classes. Why are we not thinking they can be integrated? So a lot of ideas that people need to think of in terms of how can I say that, look, let me take the full benefit of the medium and the various things that are happening in the medium, and not just say that, okay, what was being done physically for various reasons, I'm going to do the same thing, but in front of a camera. Now, I've seen worse. I've seen people putting a whiteboard at home with a marker and then putting a camera in front of it and saying that I want exactly the same experience of teaching on a whiteboard, except that I'm going to put a camera and then stream it back.
Maybe that is sometimes a lack of technology awareness or lack of resources also. I mean, like, there are some people who genuinely don't have the large, I mean, they record it on their phones. I mean, a lot of people record it on their mobile phones. They don't have a marker and they don't have a decent enough laptop, etc. Some of them did not invest. Some of them were stuck out because of the pandemic. They could not order anything. That is fine. But again, just putting a camera in front may not be the best way out. Okay, that brings us very nicely for the next part. I mean, see, you have worked as an online educator. You have worked as a franchisee for Time and CL, and you're also a teacher. So from a training sort of a perspective, like how has this pandemic changed teacher? I mean, a teacher with respect to his or her relationship with the student, because we have seen a lot of horror stories in US where the students are harassing the teacher. The teacher is not as technologically savvy as the student is. Plus, we don't know how to gauge the student attention, because there are like 50 people on a screen and I also have to concentrate on this. And there is no response. Like, okay, I don't know whether the student has understood. Whereas in a physical class, I see the student, I know, okay, this guy probably has not understood. So I'll at least go and coax him, right, to do it. How do you do that on an online sort of a thing?
What I really wanted to do is walk in the corridor between the two benches, look at their faces and look at their books, which I'm not able to do. Okay, two parts. I think one is, honestly, we have not done as much as we should have to try to encourage this thing. Coincidentally, my wife, who teaches in a school for class 4, 5, 6, 7, has done far more and putting a lot more stress. One is requiring everybody's videos to be on. So watch, of course, they are kids, they need that, but still. And then she has a list of people that she will ask questions. And she will mark down to whom she has asked questions to ensure that every few classes, everybody gets asked questions.
Wow.
So a lot of work on that aspect, and some planning on, okay, one thing, of course, this both of us have done, is we plan for small social breaks in between. Okay, so we sort of stop the class impromptu and talk about something else, and also interactive, saying that, okay, what are you doing this weekend in a pandemic time, kind of stuff, that particular thing. What new movie have you streamed, or what are you reading nowadays if somebody is reading, but very specific, 5-10 seconds kind of thing. And then we tell stories. I say, okay, this happened in IMCAL in those days, kind of stuff and all that. And then just for 5-10 minutes, just to break the monotony. That part is there. We do ask for questions in between, Normally we ask them to keep their microphones off, but in those break times we say, okay, you are allowed to, switch on your microphone and talk.
Okay.
But these are small things. Something more needs to happen as far as interactivity. Thankfully, our side, most of the teachers have made the transition quite easily into the online side. They all miss the offline, but they made the transition. Yes, school kids, we've had some kids who talk about, make irrelevant comments, and sometimes, misogynistic and other nasty comments. We had a few people who were like early Zoom bombing kind of stuff, including people, whatever we did, they used to find a way to get in. We throw them out, they find a way to get in. So these things happen. Now it is much more stable. We've figured out how to stop hackers from coming in. Existing students, sometimes, yes, but sometimes we are okay. One odd irrelevant comment or silly joke, we let it slide.
I mean, that happens in a class also, right? Once in a while. I mean,
kids. So that side. Surprisingly, the work-ex cat crowd kind of thing, kind of somewhere in those tech companies, they've lost their sense of humor kind of thing. They don't make enough jokes.
Okay. Okay. Now let us look at it from a employer perspective. I mean, you are a franchise owner. So how has your relationship changed as a sort of like an employer during this pandemic? Okay. Now, one thing which people with I mean, I'm not sure how your center works, but there are a lot of places where about 60 to 70% of the staff is on a part-time basis. I mean, they are not a full-time employee. Okay. So that flexibility already anyways was available earlier also. So in that way, probably did not change that much. But what about your fixed salary employees? How did you manage them? What were the challenges that you faced? Because even your revenues would have gone down. I mean, for the first 1 month at least, there would have been probably 1 or 2 months, there would have probably been close to zero revenues because of the pandemic and the uncertainty about it. Right.
I think it was a concern, and we didn't know how long it will last at that time.
Yeah.
Though I think very soon we got the indication. So I think one of the first steps was understand that it's going to be a long term. Once we understand it's a long term, then we know certain decisions have to be taken.
Yeah.
The good thing I think is with the full-time staff is that they understood that a certain amount of crisis that we are in, we have been very open in terms of sharing the revenues. They know the revenues anyway for their center. It's all a matter of sharing the remaining, right? Indicatively, we also share costs to them. Okay, this is the cost structure, this is the revenue, this is the forecast for the future kind of stuff. Second, we also look at it as when the cut happens, the senior staff takes the biggest cut and the first cut. So that is something that, again, from early days, we followed that same approach. So that kind of gives you trust in that. So people did take salary cuts and they were okay with it. Obviously, nobody's happy. Second is, as soon as possible, we moved from a reduced salary to a reduced salary plus incentive, which can get you back to your 100%. Which means you are at, say, 60% salary, but you do these numbers on the sales side and get back to 100.
Okay.
And that helped. People wanted to get back to the original salary. So they pushed, and that they were able to get the work done and get that part. And then when things went better, we got them back to original salary and then still had incentives. So they can now go to 120% of the salary or 140%, depending on the numbers they achieve. Part-timers did suffer in the sense that
reduced demand, so
reduced
state
more, slightly larger batch sizes. So there was a reduced demand. We tried a little bit of distribution of classes, but then you have to look at fairness as well as who are the best, and then you probably will allocate classes to the best first, and the people who are on a retainer where you have committed number of classes and all that. So a lot of part-timers didn't get classes. So that's a little worrisome. Good people. Thankfully, most of them have other employment. So in that sense, it's more of missing them rather than a huge revenue cut for them.
Mm-hmm.
Third, some stuff we had to actually fire. It's a small number, but yeah, that's always, I think, so many years of entrepreneur never get used to that. Okay, it's absolutely logical, right? It has to be done, but yeah, even for non-performance, I don't like firing people. And yeah, so unless you have a partner that you can give them, it's never easy. But the good thing I've realized is a lot of people who don't fit here have succeeded elsewhere in a different kind of work. So that helps. So in that sense, by firing them, you might be doing them a favor, because they get forced to relook at what they are good at, get into a different job, and get it done. Okay. Landlords have been quite supportive. That's another thing, because a major expense on the offline side. So it looks odd from both sides. For no fault of theirs, landlord had to take a severe cut. On the flip side, we're hardly using those centers and we're still paying, even if it is paying a reduced amount.
That's true.
So in that sense, yes, both sides, there has been a loss, but they've been supportive. That's the good part. And hopefully now we should be able to move into 100% payment for landlords.
Okay. So let's look at from a person who basically has just, I mean, you will start getting the results now. I mean, I think SP Jain has declared the results, IRMA has declared the results, etc. So people will start asking you queries like, okay, we have had 1 year of online education, and there are chances that the next year also, the first trimester, if not the first 2 trimesters, will definitely be online. I don't think colleges are completely up as of now, but at least the first trimester might be online, if not later. The worst of the pandemic is behind us, but leaving a job per se right now and joining an MBA at this stage, I mean, when people are writing the demise of MBA for the 500th time in a decade. So what is the case? I mean, like, what is the advice that you would give? I mean, like, is MBA still a way to go for people, or it's like it's a specialized niche, which anyways it should have been, but not for everyone?
I don't know. See, data is what we look at, and I'm not sure about the US picture. In the Indian picture, I think there's hardly any data to suggest that MBAs are not useful or not required in the industry. You look at across sectors. I think there's hardly a sector where MBAs have not done well, right? So hospitality, healthcare, and transportation, and edtech, and health tech, and fintech, and wherever, right? So there are people who have crossed the spectrum. So I see MBA as a good MBA should teach you to be a problem solver, somebody who can see the big picture, integrate information across different domains, make sense out of it, be smart as well as courageous enough to take decisions, try things, understand data, and so on and so forth. So obviously, MBA has its flaws. It could always be better. MBA from any IIM or any college can be made better. But I don't think there's a better alternative right now. So would we say that an IIT Bombay is a better alternative than this? Not really. Would I say that data sciences program by somebody is better, or an online MBA or an online something by Coursera is better? I don't think so. I don't think so at this stage. So yes, it can be better. Different options will come up. I think analytics programs are coming up. People are still trying that, should I do a finance MBA versus a HR MBA versus that kind of stuff. That is still happening. See, one thing will happen is there will be a certain amount of pure tech kind of companies where they will say, look, why do we need MBAs? Right? Pretty sure that's only partly true, even there. Like, for example, Google is an example of a pure engineer-driven kind of company. Not that they don't have MBAs, but MBAs have no real power there. Unless you are a tech MBA kind of thing, a top tier engineering college tech plus MBA, otherwise you don't have much power in Google. But then there are a lot of areas where Google is failing. So either you have such good tech that nobody else has, in which case a lot of your flaws will get covered up, or you have somebody who can problem solve for you kind of stuff. So I still think there is room for MBA. Oh, okay, we've digressed a little bit. Coming to specifically to our people, No, there is a demand supply kind of an issue. So there will be a demand for MBA grads in industry. So what does industry do when they want people? They've always taken freshers. So will they not take freshers because certain set of students have studied online for the second year this year, or say that, okay, next batch, because these students have done first year, their basics online, we will not take them. I don't think that really makes a difference. Yes, online will be a risk for people who are not motivated. The people who can switch on their camera and snooze off, that is a risk. That is a risk. Because the forced attendance and the compulsory class participation and the group projects, etc., has pushed a little bit. So yes, you are losing out some part of the MBA experience, a good part of it, honestly. You can't just walk into a prof room, sit there and, chit chat over chai and ask questions and, get that kind of inspirational or just freewheeling discussions kind of things do get lost a little bit. So no doubt that you're losing a part of it, of what you should have got in an MBA. But will it lead to an immediate career impact? Probably not. Probably not.
So, I mean, actually, one thing which I was just going through one of the interviews by CMI's data, that Mahesh Vyas, Dr. Vyas, if I'm not mistaken. So he was telling us that in India, I mean, if you do not get a job straight away after graduation, it's pretty difficult to get a job. I mean, to enter the job market over there. And MBA gives you the highest point of return, at least in Indian scenario, to enter into the job market. What you make out of it is completely, I mean, like, that college cannot guarantee, but at least a top college, a top 25, 30 college, 95% of the people are reasonably well placed. You get an opportunity which you are not going to get anywhere else, right? And that he has hard statistics. I mean, if you do not get employed in first 5 or 6 months after graduation, it's very difficult for you to get employed. People actually start losing motivation. They don't apply to jobs after that because they face so many rejections.
So I understand that.
I think MBA,
even MBA, if you don't get a job on campus, it's not easy. So there are two parts to it. One part to his argument is campus placement is always easier than off-campus placement. Much easier.
Definitely. Yeah.
Especially for freshers. So you work for 10 years, you can take a 6-month break and come back, especially if you have got good skills and you have an experience to back it. People will see you. But otherwise, for freshers and all, even MBA freshers, if they're not placed on campus, so there are multiple reasons why campus placement is a damn good thing. One is you're with friends, you're in a comfortable atmosphere. Company comes with an intent to select. You know that they are on campus, which means they have some kind of an obligation कि यहाँ तक आया, that सारी का दुकान गया, 100 सारी देखा, कुछ तो लेंगे. That kind of stuff. Very few companies like come to campus, spend time and go back without selecting anybody. So a lot of advantages there. The second, I don't know if it's a reflection of the quality of UG education or the fact that there's so much choice that people want some kind of filtration mechanism. I am not sure either which one is true in that sense.
I think it might be a combination of both.
So what we have seen is now in the cities, UG colleges outside of BTech are also getting decent campus placement, good ones. So your Shahid Sukhdev College, Delhi, your Symbiosis, NM and Christ, Bangalore, and other colleges like the St. Xavier's BBA, BMS, they call it in Mumbai. So these are the colleges where your 6 lakh, 7 lakh, 8 lakh jobs are possible. Which then tier 2 engineering reasonably good.
No, I mean, a 6 lakh job is way better than a TCS placement. I mean, due apologies to TCS. I mean, like, it's way better than.
I agree. And these are good companies also. A lot of these foreign companies who are coming, they might be doing KPO. They might be doing, for example, McKinsey's.
KPO is there,
yeah. KPO is there. The knowledge center where they do the primary research and secondary research and data handling. These centers are there. So a lot of global companies from Target to Goldman Sachs to a lot of these companies have their India centers. Little bit of grunt work, but you're learning. So I think that's pretty good option. So engineer or non-engineer. But the bigger problem is people don't want to or can't give a fair chance to everybody. So what they say is, look, you come from a certain college and I'll see you. So
Okay.
so that college on the CV, I think worldwide, gives you that edge in getting an opportunity. You may get an interview because you have a college in that CV. You may still not clear that interview, but you get that interview. The problem of demotivation happens when you don't get an interview. Nobody responds to your CV that you sent. But of course, the other thing people should know is use networking to get jobs. Sending CVs, I think, is outdated, especially for good jobs and good companies. They get so many CVs that you don't get seen. You have to be pushed by somebody who's in the company who knows you.
Yes,
So
that is true.
that at least will get.
And that's true. And that's true both India and abroad. It's not just in India. And
Absolutely. Which is again why people need to use LinkedIn well. Network, keep in touch, make requests, ask people to connect you, and get those job opportunities that you're looking for.
Okay, cool. So we'll finish this discussion with one part, which I wanted to ask you. So if there are any things which you have, I mean, you have had 1 year to reflect. Anything which you would do for the last 1 year, if you were to do it again, you would redo it. You play it differently.
Oh yeah, then what is life without regrets?
Okay.
I think you get so upset about certain things. You keep focusing, and it's more of a life lesson that you keep focusing on what you're not allowed to do rather than what you are still able to do. I think that's always been the thing. We worry about things that we don't have or you're not getting or why it's unfair and so on. So you miss the restaurants, you miss the movies, all that is fine. And yes, the financial aspect is also there, but I wasn't that badly hit compared to a lot of others. I had a lot of free time. I had time with children. This long dreamt project of completing my book was there, which I never got around to do still, even with the additional time that I have. Thankfully, I was able to have done better. So yes, I think while they said it's very nice to say you have free time, you should use it for skill building and all that, I don't think enough people did that. So learning a new skill definitely could have been there. More writing, which I really love to do. I've been in love with writing since school and college days and I never did much with it. So that's one area that I should have used this opportunity for.
You started cycling.
Yeah, cycling I started, yes. Was doing it a little bit pre-pandemic also, but yes, much more during pandemic. And that helps. But yeah, definitely that part. Some additional skills should have been learned, and yes, writing is one regret which I should have done in this.
Okay, cool. Chalo, thank you very much for this particular session, guys. If you like it, please do share this videos with your friends. The link to Rahul's courses from CL will be available in the description of this video. My name is Vivek. You are watching MBA Prep Talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.